We're going to do some reading, Psalm 32, and some ideas and thoughts around that. We're not going to do the whole psalm, but it's not that long, but I'm just going to take really the first 5 verses, and we'll start really with the first 4. Beginning in verse 1, "Blessed is the one whose transgression is forgiven, whose sin is covered. Blessed is the man against whom the Lord counts no iniquity, and in whose spirit there is no deceit. For when I fell silent, my bones wasted away through my groanings all day long. For day and night your hand was heavy upon me. My strength was dried up as by the heat of summer." So I think what we are hearing here from David as he describes his feelings at this time, this of course is concerning the sin that he had with Bathsheba and Uriah the Hittite. And this is one of the Psalms that he wrote concerning that event and God's forgiveness. But I think in verse 3 and 4 especially, he's describing just shame. And, he says he kept silent, his bones wasted away, and he was groaning all day long. And day and night, God's hand was heavy upon him. I mean, not literally, but because he was a man after God's own heart, that weighed down his heart. And so it was a pressure on him. And his strength was dried up. And so Noah in the dictionary describes shame as a painful sensation excited by consciousness of guilt or having done something which injures your reputation, or by the exposure of that which by nature or modesty prompts us to conceal. It says shame is particularly excited by the disclosure of actions which, in view of men, are mean and degrading. And often it's manifested with a downcast look, or as people don't hold up their head anymore. They're looking down, or they might be blushing because of it. Shame is the cause, or can be a cause or reason for it, that which brings reproach and degrades a person in the estimation of others. It can be defined as a reproach. That's the expression of disapproval or disappointment, a loss of reputation, disgrace. It can also mean ignominy, which is great public shame, disgrace, or embarrassment, a cause for disgrace because of a shameful act. So obviously David felt guilty about his sin. He knew he had done wrong. Of course, in the heat of the moment, he tried to cover it up. First by, having Uriah the Hittite come back home, and so he would lay with his wife, and the pregnancy would be his and not David's, even though David knew otherwise. And since that didn't work, he decided he needed to put Uriah to death. And he thought he was covering his tracks, I guess, as most of us do when we get in a situation like that, and we are just acting without really thinking about necessarily what's going on. And, he might have fooled the majority of the nation, but there were people who knew, those closest to him. The commander of his army knew. He said, if he asked, why'd you get so close to the battle that, good men died, and tell him Uriah the Hittite's dead, because he knew that would console him. He knew that was the reason he put him in the situation that he was. So it wasn't even the people who brought Bathsheba to him and all that. There's people who knew what was going on. They may not have known all the details, but they knew something was going on. And so David could hide it for only so long. And of course, the sins that he committed, both adultery and murder, were both felonies deserving death. The death penalty was a requirement by both under the law. But in verse 5, of course, David says, I acknowledged my sin to you, talking to God, and I did not cover my iniquity. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave the iniquity of my sin. So David humbles himself, and he confesses his sin, and God forgives him. And he also removes the death penalty, which is stated in 2 Samuel 12, which of course was part of the reading too, and in verse 13. And in that verse, David says to Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. And Nathan said to David, the Lord has also put away your sin. You shall not die. Now, why God told him that through Nathan, we're not given all the details and how that worked, because anybody who knew the law knew that the death penalty was what he should have undergone. But like I said, we're not given the details. All we know is God said, whether Nathan told the people and they understood or what, we're not really given all that. But I want to compare David's release from his shame to what the world provides in the way of the removal of shame. Of course, this is just one thing. There's hundreds of, probably thousands of others, but it's one that kind of troubles me a little bit. And in the business world, they're not worried. They know that shame is an issue. It's a problem, like it talked about David bottling up all this shame inside of him, and it caused him to really not be able to function well. Well, the business world knows that, if you can bring, we'll say, if you have no shame, if you can bring your authentic self to work, that you are a better employee. You'll produce better, you'll be more creative, you'll have more ideas, you'll be able to express yourself without fear. And they do this under the guise of what they call diversity and inclusion. And there's some good points to it. I mean, it looks at those who are disabilitied or certain categories of people that they fall under these things. But the one that's most troubling is the LGBTQ community. And so, basically what it does is allows them to be open about their sin without shame. It used to be that when they used to call it coming out of the closet for those who are in that realm, I guess. And it was a hard thing for them to do. It was shameful that you told your family or friends or anybody that you were of that ilk. And now this diversity and inclusion allows them to be open about it without any shame. In fact, they can take pride in it, and they can just embrace themselves as they are and embrace their sin and go on about life, and everything's good. I guess it's good for business, but I don't know. In God's eyes, we know it's not good at all. God says in 1 John 1:9 to confess our sins one with another, and that God is faithful, and He is just, and He will forgive our sins, and He will cleanse us from all unrighteousness. So all I have to say tonight, if you are bottled up shame, no, it's not doing good for you. No, we don't want to live in shame, obviously, and sometimes we get caught up in things. But if you keep it bottled up, it doesn't do you any good. The Lord wants us to confess our sins, not necessarily in public. I understand there's trust issues, but if there's somebody who you can trust that you can speak to about something that's bothering you, you need to take the opportunity to do that, because it's just causing you emotional harm. And God doesn't want us to live in that state. Negativity breeds negativity. And so if we can help you in that way, or if you need forgiveness of sins, I don't see any visitors, but whatever we need, come forward as we stand and sing.